Good afternoon to everyone who's assembled here, and good afternoon, Minnesota. I'll be joined today by Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry and by St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter. We're going to take a little bit of time to try and describe what the intentions are for this week as the trial of Derek Chauvin is now in the hands of the jury, and as importantly, talk a little bit about what are the next steps in that. It's become kind of cliche to mention this last year has been incredibly difficult, and that is true across the country, particularly true here in Minnesota. Our pain and our trauma were videotaped and displayed for the world. The world watched George Floyd die with a knee on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. And they've seen it replayed so many times that the spectacle of a black man dying, I fear that we desensitize just the horrificness of what was witnessed on that Memorial Day last year. And we're here this week because of that act, plain and simple, at the end point where we watched a man's humanity be taken and then we watched his life be taken. Last May and June, we watched that pain, that anger, and that heartbreak pour out into our streets here, across the country, and around the world. That civil unrest that followed here in Minnesota left nearly 1,000 businesses in ruin, and the life stream of many with them. Many of those were businesses owned by people of color, the very people that are traumatized by what we saw with George Floyd. Our state was shattered, the fierce urgency for change was upon us, and we came together bipartisanly, and we passed a small package of reforms, a beginning. But we stalled. We weren't able to pass a package to fund and rebuild those businesses, to make sure that we provided those opportunities in those very communities that were traumatized. We all know that what you're seeing right now is reactive. It's not proactive. Communities have been demanding change. They've demanded that it wasn't enough. And they very clearly stated if the systemic changes that need to be made aren't made, that things would repeat themselves. And when I say things, I mean the horrific deaths of young black men over and over, and a systemic feeling in this state that not everyone gets the same opportunities. And just a week ago on Sunday afternoon, we in the world watched again as Daunte Wright's humanity was taken from him, and then his life. And now we're here with our justice system. Just put the decision for Derek Chauvin will be decided by that jury. His fate will be decided by the jury. We'll decide our fate in this state. We must acknowledge two truths. We cannot allow civil unrest to descend into chaos. We must protect life and property. But we also must understand very clearly, if we don't listen to those communities in pain and those people on the streets, many of whom were arrested for speaking a fundamental truth, that we must change or we will be right back here again. And so in this moment, it's our goal together, the mayors, the community organizers, people across this state, from law enforcement to ministerial associations, is to try and make sure that we strike that proper balance of making sure that the peace and stability is upheld, but that equally as important is that rage that will be on the street regardless of what happens is channeled into a positive way, and that positive way means change. We have to have that change. We can't live like this. We cannot continue to live like this. Systemic and fundamental changes will need to be made. It needs to be started with systemic public safety reforms. Some very simple truths that I think we can all agree on, and let's work from there. No one should die for a simple traffic violation. There's enough smart people out there and enough agreement around that we should be able to find some answers. Because to be very clear, if we don't find that answer, we're going to be right back in this situation, and I'm going to continue to say it. We cannot continue. We cannot live this way. Communities need to be heard. They're frustrated, not just out on the streets and say, why are you doing that? Because they're not being heard. They're demanding that these changes be made. They told us last year, change cash bail, change how you do traffic stops. It didn't happen, and look what we got. I was speaking to a woman today, a black mother, and I was explaining how frustrating it is in our political system to try and find consensus to get stuff done. And she said, wait a minute. She said, you're frustrated? She said, you're the governor of the damn state. Think how frustrated I am. What power do I have to change this? Her point was, listen, and make the changes. Don't find a reason you need to go home. Don't find a reason to adjourn. And don't say it's hard. Hard is Katie Wright having to stand in front of the press and the shame that all of us should feel to watch her talk about why her son died. She doesn't need our pity. She doesn't need our sympathies. She doesn't need us talking to her. She needs us to do actions. And I say us, me and everyone else are a part of it. But let's be very clear. George and Dante and Philando and Jamal, we can go through anything in Minnesota. The names, say their names. I hear that in front of my house as I should. Say their names. They need to know that I better go to bed thinking about say their names of who died. What's unfortunate is it wasn't on 38th in Chicago or out in Brooklyn Center where their destinies and fate were put into play. Their destinies and fate were put into play before they were even born. Health disparities are apparent prenatal. Almost catastrophically, the number of women who die in childbirth or from it is simply unacceptable. Their fate was set when they get expelled from schools for disciplinary actions at a rate much higher than their white classmates. Educational attainment levels, home ownership disparities, economic disparities. It's simply a miracle that more don't end up there because of the system that's set that way. And we expect our police department to fix all of that. We expect that when it gets to there, they're going to make those corrections that go all the way back to pre-birth. So yes, we need to make systemic changes to take away the immediate danger, but we also need to have this recognition that if we can figure out a way to fund to get ready for this so that we don't burn down our buildings, then we can find the money to fund summer school and meals for these kids and do the things that are necessary. We can't keep making this a false choice. And we can't keep expecting that through more training and things like that, we're going to fix it all. We can remove a lot of the threats, but these will continue to manifest themselves unless we tackle that piece of it. The things that we need to do on systemic racism, I said, we're a proud state, but we're a state that needs to come to grips with our own history. We're a state that needs to have that conversation. We're a nation that needs to have that conversation. I pledge to do all I can. I think about that I'm hearing people say how stressed they are this week. Again, I had a mother say, that's how I feel every time my son gets in the car to drive to soccer practice, every single day. And the rest of us are waiting, tension, what's going to happen? Where is this going to come back? That's how people live their lives. We can't live that way. We can't allow our neighbors to live that way. Or young black youth. They apparently all know about it. There's a Siri app that the minute you're pulled over, you hey Siri, so it notifies your parents where you're at and starts recording right away. My kids don't have to do that. They don't have to think about that. What a diminishment of life if that's the first thing that's on your mind. You might have actually been 5 miles over the speed limit. Well, that's not the end of the world. We have to enforce our laws, but we have to have a sense of reasonableness here. And those are the things that are out there. So I pledge to do what we can do. And I want to say, I hear those concerns who fear for their businesses and their homes. We need to provide the security, and we're prepared to do so. But I also at the same hand want to hear, I hear those decrying their inability to protest and what they believe is heavy and too much that's out there. We need to strike that balance. I'll be the first to tell you, this is not the way to live. We need to fix those other things so we don't have to end up with National Guard on our streets. But I cannot allow those businesses to burn. I cannot have people's livelihood or their safety put at play, but I will recognize what they're saying. You will continue to have to do that if you don't listen to what's being said and the changes that need to be made. And I'd like to take a moment and express this concern around our press concerns. I just want to say this. We don't need apologies when it becomes closing down press. It's easy here to give press access. And I want people to understand this is such a fundamental concern that it actually shakes at the heart of our democracy. We have seen press and press freedoms around the world under threat. We've seen journalists attacked and killed. We've seen those that diminish and say things like fake news and try and diminish. It's not fake news just because you don't agree with it. It's not fake news because it criticizes you. It's trying to get the truth out so that people can be informed on the decisions we make. And I know that there are situations, and our law enforcement tries to do the best they can, but this is truly a zero-sum proposition. We have got to get this right. And I'm asking, and we're hearing and trying to make changes in real time, but I think we need a national discussion about this because the thing that always comes up, that it's easy to give press access unless it's chaotic. unless it's chaotic, like you're seeing on the streets, unless something's happening. What we need to change our perception, we being those in elected office and Americans, we are not here to manage the press. The press does not need to be managed. We need to figure out at that time of most chaos, that's the time it's most important for press freedom. And we're not getting that right. And we're not getting it right out of malice. We're not getting it right because we don't believe this or our law enforcement doesn't believe it. We are apparently not using the tools necessary to make sure that that full freedom of movement so the story's told. And that's the story of how the police are responding. It's the story of how protesters are responding. It's the story that someone else can tell, not the story we want to tell or they want to tell. It's the story that's out there. So again, we have more work to do there. We will do the best in Minnesota to try and set the standard around that. We have failed this week. It's especially egregious to me when I hear stories of a black reporter having to be verified by a white reporter before someone will believe them, or an Asian journalist being asked if she speaks English. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable both in the time we're at. I know our law enforcement works as well as they can and tries to do this. We have to change the culture on how we view this. We have to make sure that it doesn't matter if you're the small town, one sheriff town, or you're a large police force or the state patrol or so forth. We all have to agree. And I know that's the core values, but we have to have results. So my commitment and ask of all of you is this is our moment, Minnesota, to draw around our common humanity. The jury will decide that fate. I don't know what will come back. But what I do know is that we're going to be shaped by the response, both in the coming days and in the months and years to come. So that commitment to protect your right to protest, we'll continue to do it and do even better. We will protect your life and property, and we will do so within the limits of the law. And we'll work to make sure, as we said, that these changes that have to happen will happen.